Nebraska sky, summer 1909. A golden wheat field stretched to the horizon, and in the middle of that sea of wheat, a boy was running. His face was sweaty and scared, as if he was trying to hide from something only he could see. More than a century later, a researcher named Sarah stumbled upon that photo, a photograph of the last moments of young Thomas Henderson, just before a fire burned down his family's farm. But as Sarah traced the past, she realized something was wrong. The photo was too perfect. The photographer appeared too perfect, and in the background, there seemed to be another figure. Who really started the fire that year? Why was the boy running before the fire even started? And what was it about the photo that kept it hidden for more than 100 years? Tonight, join me in that story where an old photograph whispered a secret that should never have been revealed. The year is 2024. Deep inside the archives of the Smithsonian Institution, silence hangs heavy among the endless rows of forgotten history. Dr. Sarah Mitchell adjusts her glasses beneath the dim yellow light. Before her lies an old leather-bound album, recently donated from the estate of a long-deceased collector. The air smells of dust and time, of paper that remembers. Each photograph within captures life in rural America between 1905 and 1915, scenes of quiet fields, horse-drawn wagons, and families frozen in black and white. For Sarah, who has spent 15 years studying early photography, this is a treasure trove of the past. But nothing could have prepared her for what she was about to see. Halfway through the album, she pauses. A single photograph catches her attention, labeled simply Nebraska farmland. Summer 1909. A sea of wheat stretches to the horizon. A small farmhouse stands in the distance. At first it seems ordinary, just another tranquil glimpse of America's early heartland. But then, her eyes drift to the lower right corner. There a faint blur. Someone running. Sarah leans closer. Cameras in 1909 required long exposures. Motion rarely appeared at all. Yet here a small figure races across the field as if fleeing something unseen. Her curiosity sharpens. She lifts her magnifying glass, and what she sees makes her blood run cold. It's a boy. No more than 8 or 9. His clothes are torn, his face frozen in a silent scream, and his eyes wide with terror. The edges of his shirt appear, burn the fabric singed and curling. Sarah calls her colleague Dr. James Morrison, an expert in photographic restoration. Within hours he arrives with his scanning equipment. Together, they handle the fragile photo as if it might shatter the silence itself. Once the high-resolution scan is complete, James begins enhancing the image, carefully adjusting the light and contrast. Bit by bit, the boy becomes clearer, sharper, until the truth can no longer hide in the shadows. "My God," James whispers. "Sarah, look, the boy isn't just running. He's running from something. Something that left behind only fear and fire." Driven by dread and curiosity, Sarah searches for the land's history. Old county records reveal the property once belonged to the Henderson family. Robert and Margaret, immigrants from Germany, with 3 children, Emma 12, Thomas 9, and little Mary 6. Then in the August 15th, 1909 issue of the Nebraska County Herald, she finds it. A headline reads, Local farm family perishes in mysterious fire. The report describes a blaze that consumed the Henderson farmhouse overnight, killing all 5 members. But the strangest detail, neighbors claimed the fire erupted simultaneously in multiple parts of the property. Not an accident, not something natural, something else. Now, as Sarah stares again at that century-old photograph, the boy's blurred figure seems almost alive forever, running through the wheat away from the flames no one could see. Was the camera capturing a moment in time, or something beyond it? A warning, a ghost trying to escape its own fate. The newspaper report was brief, but its words lingered like smoke. It mentioned that young Thomas Henderson's body had been found nearly a quarter mile from the ruins of the farmhouse, as though he'd tried to outrun the fire itself. The sheriff was quoted saying, "The boy must have run with superhuman speed to cover such distance." But the flames caught him nonetheless. Sarah stared at the line for a long time. If the photograph truly dated from the summer of 1909 and the fire occurred that August, then the image might not just depict Thomas Henderson. It might have captured his final, desperate moments. But how could anyone have been there, camera ready in the middle of nowhere during the very night of a family's tragedy? Determined to find out, Sarah traveled to Nebraska. The landscape stretched wide and silent under a pale sky, endless fields that seemed to hum with memories. An elderly man named William Crawford met her at the edge of a dusty road. He had lived there all his life. His grandfather, he said, had been one of the neighbors who saw the flames that night. Together they crossed the tall prairie grass. Where the Henderson farmhouse once stood, only fragments of stone remained, half buried, half forgotten. As they walked, William spoke softly, as if afraid to disturb something still sleeping in the soil. "My grandfather always said there was something unnatural about that fire," he murmured. He saw lights, little lights, dancing across the wheat right before it started. And the boy, Thomas, he was already running before the flames appeared. Like he knew. Sarah felt the wind shift. The field whispered. She knelt to take photographs, marking coordinates, documenting the emptiness. Then something caught her eye, a faint glimmer among the roots of the grass. She brushed away the dirt with her fingertips and uncovered a small metal toy soldier. Its paint had long since faded, but its form remained intact, the tiny figure standing firm against a century of storms. Later, back in Washington, Sarah sought answers that science could offer. She contacted Dr. Elizabeth Kumar, a forensic photography specialist at Georgetown University. Together, they examined the photograph using the most advanced techniques available. The results were undeniable. The image was authentic, created with silver halide on early 20th century paper. No signs of forgery, no tampering, no composite layering. The light patterns, shadows, and grain structure were perfectly consistent. Dr. Kumar folded her hands and looked up at Sarah. "Whatever this photograph shows," she said quietly, "it happened exactly as the camera captured it. But that only deepened the mystery. Who took it? And why were they there at the very moment Thomas Henderson ran for his life?" Sarah searched every record she could find, scouring the archives of the Nebraska Historical Society. And finally, she found a name: Edmund Hartwell. A traveling photographer known for documenting rural American life in the early 1900s, moving from farm to farm with his camera, packed in a horse-drawn wagon. Records showed that Hartwell was working in Nebraska County during the summer of 1909. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she turned the brittle pages of his personal journal preserved by his descendants. And there, in ink, faded but legible, she found his entries. August 14th, 1909. Arrived at the Henderson farm this afternoon to photograph their wheat harvest. Strange feeling here. The family seems nervous, always looking toward the horizon as though expecting something. Young Thomas keeps asking his father when they can leave. I've set up camp nearby. We'll begin photographing at dawn. Then the next page. August 15th, 1909. The handwriting trembled uneven and frightened. Woke before dawn to the sound of running footsteps. I thought to capture the morning's first light, perhaps the boy at play. But what I saw, the boy Thomas was running through the field in absolute terror. I saw no threat, no person, nothing. Only him and the wind. I lifted the camera and took one picture. And then, the farm ignited. All at once. Every building, every stalk of wheat aflame, as if the air itself had caught fire. Sarah's eyes moved slowly over the final lines. The ink was smeared there as if written with trembling hands or tears. No one ever saw Edmund Hartwell again after that entry. His name vanished from records. His wagon, his camera, his life gone. And the photograph he left behind, the one showing a boy running through the wheat of Nebraska, his face frozen in a silent scream. It is all that remains. Was Thomas Henderson running from the fire, or from something that came before the fire? Some say the field still glows faintly at night, as if the past, for reasons we cannot name, refuses to stay buried. The family's screams will haunt me forever. Those were the last words Edmund Hartwell ever wrote about that morning. His final journal entry, dated days after the fire, read, I have developed the photograph from that terrible dawn. It shows the boy his final moments of freedom before the flames took him. I cannot bear to show it to anyone. Some images are too terrible for the world to see. I am leaving Nebraska immediately, and I pray I never return to that cursed place. When Sarah read those lines, she understood. Hartwell had hidden the photograph among his hundreds of other rural scenes, unable to destroy it, but terrified of its truth. When his estate was sold in 1963, the photo passed quietly into the Smithsonian's archives, stripped of its story. Its secret buried for more than 60 years. But the deeper Sarah dug, the darker the trail became. In recently digitized state archives, she unearthed the official report from the Nebraska State Fire Marshal's office, a document long forgotten. The conclusion was chilling. The fire was deliberately set. No one was ever charged. And yet, several witnesses reported seeing a figure moving through the wheat fields in the hours before the blaze, a tall man in dark clothing, walking slowly, deliberately, as if searching for something or someone. Even more disturbing, the report noted that Thomas Henderson's body showed no signs of smoke inhalation. He hadn't died in the fire. He had been running before it began, just as Hartwell's journal had described. As if the flames were not what he feared, but what followed. Sarah's research soon uncovered another piece of the puzzle. The Hendersons had been entangled in a bitter land dispute with a developer named Marcus Thornfield, a man known for bullying small farmers into selling their land to make way for a proposed railroad expansion. Neighbors spoke of threats of men in black coats arriving uninvited, of families who vanished after refusing to sell. The records showed that within weeks of the fire, Thornfield purchased the Henderson property for a fraction of its value, one of several farms he acquired under similarly unfortunate circumstances. His fortune grew. The railroad came, and the Hendersons were erased from history, except for one image. Then Sarah found a page in Hartwell's journal she had missed the first time, one final trembling confession. I cannot stop thinking about what I saw that morning. Just before the boy began to run, I glimpsed a tall man in dark clothing moving through the wheat. He was following the child, never close, never far. And when Thomas looked back, it was not the fire he feared, but him. Sarah's breath caught as she read. The implications were terrifying. Thomas Henderson wasn't fleeing from a blaze, he was running from someone. The photograph might not only document a tragedy, but evidence of murder that was never solved. Dr. Morrison began another round of digital analysis, focusing on the far background, the part of the photo no one had ever studied closely. Bit by bit, the image sharpened. And then, faintly almost lost in the silver grain, a shape began to emerge. A tall silhouette standing in the wheat, watching. Featureless, still, as if waiting for the boy to fall. Sarah stared at the screen, her pulse echoing in her ears. For more than a century, the photograph had held its secret unseen. And now, under the glow of a digital monitor, that secret was finally waking. Somewhere between light and shadow, between history and something far older, the boy in the field keeps running. Forever, caught in the moment before the fire, while the figure behind him never stops watching. There seems to be another figure moving through the tall wheat. At first, it's little more than a smudge of shadow against the pale Nebraska fields, too distant, too blurred to see clearly. But its presence lends weight to Hartwell's final account. The claim that someone had been pursuing the boy that morning, that Sarah stares at the image for a long time before deciding to act. She contacts the Nebraska State Police, hoping that even after more than a century, someone might listen. Detective Lisa Rodriguez, a quiet woman with a sharp mind and a reputation for untangling cold cases, agrees to review Sarah's findings. The detective's voice crackles softly over the phone. Cases like this fascinate me, she admits. We can't prosecute anyone now, but there are families who still wonder. Sometimes finding the truth is its own kind of justice. Intrigued, Rodriguez begins to dig into the past. Her research uncovers a troubling pattern surrounding one name, Marcus Thornfield, a land developer active in the early 1900s. Throughout Nebraska and the neighboring states, Thornfield had purchased farmland under suspicious circumstances. Families who refused to sell often suffered accidents, fires, floods, unexplained disasters that drove them away. Nothing was ever proven, but the pattern was too consistent to ignore. Sarah's work begins to draw attention from historians, genealogists, and eventually from the descendants of the Henderson family themselves. One day she receives a letter from Patricia Henderson Williams, the great-great-granddaughter of Robert Henderson. Patricia's words tremble with a mix of grief and relief. She writes of family stories handed down through generations, of whispered threats of men who came to the farm at night. Men who never gave their names, but made it clear the Hendersons were no longer welcome in Nebraska. My great-great-grandmother's sister lived in Iowa. Patricia tells Sarah later by phone. She said Robert had written to her about those men. Thomas was terrified. He barely slept, always watching the windows, listening for footsteps in the fields. Suddenly, the photograph takes on a terrible new meaning. The boy in that image wasn't merely running from fire. He was fleeing from something far worse, from fear that had stalked his family for weeks. His face, frozen in panic, was not reacting to smoke, but to pursuit. Sarah's discovery ripples far beyond the boundaries of one forgotten tragedy. She is invited to speak at the International Conference on Historical Photography, where researchers from around the world gather to hear her story. Standing before them, Sarah speaks softly. Every photograph tells a story. But sometimes, the most important story isn't the one we first see. The audience listens in stillness as she explains how a single rural photograph, thought to capture a simple pastoral moment, revealed the evidence of a century-old crime. Her methods, combining digital enhancement, archival digging, and field investigation, begin to reshape how others study historical imagery. Soon, universities begin teaching the Henderson photograph as a case study in forensic photography. Students learn not only about pixels and exposure, but about empathy, the ability to see the lives hidden within frozen moments of time. Dr. Morrison, Sarah's colleague, publishes a paper detailing the digital restoration that exposed what had long remained invisible. His work advances an entire field, giving other researchers new ways to unearth the past from fading silver and dust. Meanwhile, Detective Rodriguez continues to follow the trail of Marcus Thornfield. What she finds is chilling. Thornfield was not alone. His methods, coercion, fear, destruction, were mirrored by other developers across the Midwest. A quiet wave of violence disguised as progress. A century later, the names are forgotten, but the land remembers. To honor that memory, the Nebraska Historical Society creates an exhibit titled Hidden Stories: What Photographs Don't Tell Us. Visitors gather around the glass case displaying Hartwell's haunting image of Thomas Henderson running through the wheat, the flames, and horizon, blending into one. Beside the photograph stands a small memorial placed there by Sarah and Patricia Henderson Williams. It marks the spot where the farmhouse once stood, acknowledging the boy's brief life and the mystery that consumed it. A copy of the photograph rests within the soil as if returning the story to where it began. For Sarah, the discovery changes everything. She found not just a lost image, but the beating heart of a forgotten life. Her work grows into a foundation, dedicated to investigating mysterious photographs, those silent witnesses that history has left behind. The enhanced photograph of Thomas Henderson becomes one of the most studied historical images of the 20th century. It reminds us that behind every frame of light and shadow, there lies a human story. And sometimes, those stories whisper truths that refuse to stay buried. Sarah often finds herself staring at the image late at night. The boy's final run through that Nebraska field. The moment before the flames, before the silence. Hartwell's camera had not just captured a tragedy, it had preserved a plea waiting more than 100 years for someone to listen. Now the photograph hangs in Sarah's office at the Smithsonian. A single black and white ghost from 1909 suspended between time and memory. It watches over her work, a reminder that persistence can resurrect truth, and that some voices, though silenced long ago, still find a way to be heard.